Before I start, this is just a reminder, Shit's Fucked is based on my own experiences with sobriety, mental health, and trauma. Each person's experiences and recovery is different. I hope you enjoy the podcast, but please note that I am not a medical professional. However, I hope to introduce you to resources and people who may be able to help. Trigger warning. There are deep discussions of drug use, overdosing, suicide, the addict lifestyle, and all the in-between that comes with addiction within this episode. If you're an addict in recovery, please be mindful before proceeding as you may be triggered. Hello and welcome to Shit's Fucked. My name is Paris and I am the host. And today we have a very special guest speaker on, Joel. He's actually here to talk about his journey from heroin addiction to recovery. So welcome, Joel. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. How you going?
Yeah, good. How have you been today?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good as well. Yeah, just cruising.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So I guess we'll get into the nitty gritty and we'll shoot off with the first question.
Let's do it.
Which was hard. It was hard to think of the first question to ask you for this one, but it's like, where do you start, honestly, when it comes to addiction? So let's go back to the beginning, talk a little bit about, you told me that you had an addiction to benzos first before it evolved into heroin. So how did that happen, and how did that then later evolve to that type of use?
Pretty much stemming from just a difficult high school kind of experience. I had just some family problems, bit of a broken dynamic there, and then my parents separated, and I was picked on in high school, and then pretty early on was diagnosed with a panic disorder and some severe anxiety, and I was prescribed Valium from I think 17. And yeah, I think that's where I learnt that, hey, I can experience this really uncomfortable feeling, and then I can take a tablet and that'll make it go away.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the addiction to benzos began. Obviously, it wasn't just like a overnight kind of thing. I was mucking around with other drugs, and I got into drugs quite late compared to some others. It was about kind of 17, 18 that I first smoked weed, which is the first drug that I took. And Valium was around that time as well. And got into raving and all the stimulants, MDMA and meth and a few other bits and bobs. And benzos were always there just to kind of bring me back down. And that was kind of like, that was the part of the evenings and the partying that I enjoyed the most, was actually coming home and getting on the downers and relaxing and slowing down. And that's what really kind of got its hooks into me.
So a lot of it was that feeling of slowing down, relaxing even, and just trying to numb your feelings out.
Yeah, essentially, because I found when I would take other drugs, stimulants, it would exacerbate all the feelings that I had. So my drug use was about escaping and avoiding and numbing. And when I took the stimulants, it sent me the other direction. So I wouldn't really get on the stimulants unless I had some benzos or something else to bring me down afterwards. And so that became problematic pretty quickly, because when, like, my peers that I was partying with, when it got to the end of the night and they were coming down, the stimulants were wearing off, they might eventually go to bed or whatever. That was kind of my time to get on the downers and get myself through, a couple of days, whatever, and then I could take stimulants again. And so it just became this cycle, this looping of just kind of getting high on the stimulants and then coming down, and then just kind of continuing in that cycle there.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And like for me, it's funny because I was completely opposite. I mean, I loved my stimulants. I mean, we've talked about that
Yeah.
previously, but yeah, it was actually, meth was my poison, and it actually numbed out a lot for me. But it is also something that can really accelerate you as well. Like I wouldn't say you feel relaxed when you're taking meth, so
Oh my God, far from it.
yeah, no, not at all. So yeah, no, it's really interesting to see kind of like the opposites happening there as well, particularly with wanting to slow down, and I can see how that would have then led to a path of heroin. Like how did you even get introduced to that? Because I still find in Australia it is still a little bit more underworld than even meth. So I'd love to hear more about how did you get to that point?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I started experimenting with drugs, just kind of like partying and whatnot. I would hear the word heroin, and it was like this big taboo word. And I remember thinking to myself, like, no fucking way am I ever going to go near that. I'm scared of it. It just sounds hectic and consuming. And it was like people that use intravenously and inject it. I was disgusted by it, really, and I feared it, and I never thought that I'd ever get anywhere near that point. But I did eventually. But like the journey there from kind of where I was in that story before, using benzos and stimulants and whatnot, the first step was codeine for me, which is
Right.
which I think hooks a lot of people. And so codeine is an opiate painkiller, and at that age, I was able to buy it over the counter from a chemist without a prescription. And since then, the laws have changed, and now you need to go to a doctor and get prescribed, yada yada. So first time I tried codeine, I was just with a friend, and he used to enjoy taking them. Like basically, the box says recommended dose is take 2 at a time, and he suggested I take 3 to get a bit of a buzz off it. So I took 3, got a buzz off it, and was like, "Whoa, I love that feeling. That's like nothing else that I've experienced." And it felt like the drugs I've been using so far, I was always chasing more and chasing something. And the first time I took codeine, an opiate, was almost like I'd found it. I'd found what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I suddenly had this connection with this class of drugs, opiates, painkiller, because I was just experiencing so much inner pain and turmoil, and this just instantly relieved me of that. And I was very much into extremes, and so I was never happy just taking 1 or 2 pills of MDMA, or it was always like having a 10 pack a night or something like that, just pushing these limits. And then I'd brag about it with my friends, and I just wanted to be like totally off my face all the time, rather than just like go out and just have a little buzz and socialize and whatnot. And so this
Yeah.
played out in my codeine use as well. So those 3 tablets, suddenly I'm taking 10 tablets at a time, and then I'm taking 20 at a time, and then I'm taking a full box of 40 at a time. And to have that amount of codeine mixed with paracetamol, which is what the tablets are, can be extremely fatal. So I began to run them through a filter and extract the codeine like from the tablets, leaving the paracetamol. So then I could just have this liquid, and I could have these really big amounts of codeine without dying, essentially.
Yeah, right.
And my tolerance was just increasing exponentially, like so rapidly. And so before long, a box of 40 wasn't enough for me. So then I'd go hit up a second chemist, because one chemist wouldn't sell me 2 boxes. They would ask a lot of questions about the reasons I need it. And then the chemists around my area started to get to know me, and they would refuse me. So each morning
that was good in a sense.
What was that?
That was good in a sense.
Yeah. They were trying. Like within the rules. So I'd go hit the one chemist, hit the second chemist, and I have my 80 tablets. I have 80 tablets at once. And then it fell into 3 packets, and I was having 120 tablets in one hit. And just so I just kept pushing these numbers. And it was a pretty severe addiction. Like I wouldn't be able to go a day without it. I'd be like hitting withdrawals and getting sick and freaking out. And from there, how it kind of escalated further was I started getting close to overdoses happening within my body from the amount of codeine, and like all my skin would puff up, and my face would just like puff out like I'd been stung like a bee, and I'd get like hot and sweaty, and I'd feel like I'm just about to like faint all the time. Like it was a bit hectic. So I started searching for something stronger, and was introduced to oxycodone in the form of OxyContin, which is just a slow release painkiller, but it's incredibly strong. It's often used for people with like terminal illness and cancer, and just who are just experiencing extreme pain. And getting into those was like a real game changer for me, in the sense of the codeine. I felt like I was dependent, but with the oxy, like I just started to do more dodgy stuff to get it, and I felt like it was a matter of survival for me to get it, and like it felt like I'd almost do anything to get it, just to not go into withdrawals.
Yeah, and that's a common thing, actually. I was living with well, I wouldn't even say living. I was sharing a space with someone for like a week who was a heroin addict, and her withdrawals were just so intense. They were really scary to witness, and so I'm not surprised that people find that so hard to break that cycle, because it's such an easy fix to just use again and not feel that shit. But yeah, it's pretty bad. Like you get such hectic symptoms from it. Like she was vomiting, practically shitting herself. Like she was just in the worst phase. Like she scared me a lot, actually. It was terrifying to watch. But it's just such a powerful drug, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hectic. And I mean, like the withdrawals alone are just horrendous, like you were saying. But what was also scary for me was just where my mind would take me to, like when I was in those really dark places and I was sick, and just the thoughts that I would have of like, how am I going to get money to pay for it? And I had some pretty dark ideas of what I could do. And so it was like, it really felt like a shift had happened there, and I knew that it was a problem at that point.
Yeah, and it's tough when you get into that headspace, because even I've been in that headspace before, when you're trying to get money to enable your use further, because it does become a little bit more survival mode. It's like you need this, like, and it's such a yuck feeling. It's like, I need this thing, and you're just constantly chasing it, and it's horrible. It's a horrible life to experience. It's honestly like this endless hamster wheel you're just running on, and it's just awful. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, so I'm sure you wouldn't either.
Yeah.
But in saying all that, I guess, heroin it's so dangerous. People can, easily overdose on that as well. So what were some of the terrifying or most terrifying experiences that you've endured when you were just even in that world? Because I feel like it is a very different world to even what I experienced. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about, what kind of things you were seeing in that world. What were you experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it was terrifying. Yeah, but when I mean, just finishing off that last little bit there. So I was on the oxy, and I'm just gonna bridge how I got from oxy to heroin, right?
Yes.
And using intravenously. So the oxy, I was snorting it and eating it and smoking it, like chasing the dragon, smoking it on the foil. And then the laws changed, and you could no longer crush the tablets, which made it available for me to smoke and snort and all this kind of stuff. And so they didn't have the same effect. And so then I went chasing something stronger again, and heroin was like the next, or like the final stop on that opiate tree. I mean, there are stronger opiates again. But yeah, and then I tried kind of snorting it and smoking it, blah, 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 and didn't last very long. And then ended up shooting it, injecting it. And that was, that's been the really terrifying things began for me. I mean, like overdoses were super common for me. That was pretty scary. Just be somewhere and have a shot, and then suddenly wake up the next day in a hospital bed, not knowing what's going on. I've just got cords attached to me all over. One time I my first overdose wasn't heroin. My first overdose was a New Year's Eve, and I was mixing GHB with Xanax.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And there was a bunch of people at our house. We're kind of having a party, and we're all sitting in my friend's room, and we're like dosing, taking turns, taking little doses, right? And everybody was kind of having a good time, and me, I wasn't happy with the doses that I was getting there, so I had my own stash in my room. So I'd have a little dose with everyone. I'd sneak off to my room, go have more. Ended up overdosing that night. Woke up in the hospital the next afternoon, and I had 10 different substances in my body. And I woke up, and my wrists and my ankles were strapped to the bed, and I had a big. I woke up momentarily. I had this big tube down my mouth, and I couldn't breathe, and I had a catheter in my dick, and I was just had cables all over me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And then the nurses told me that I've been trying to attack the nurses. That's why I was restrained. So that was a really horrible moment for me, because I just don't really think I'm a violent person, and I just had obviously totally lost control the night before, and that was a bit of a wake up call for me. Like, hey, something's going wrong here. You're a bit out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, that sounds absolutely terrifying. I mean, I was lucky that I didn't experience anything like that, having to wake up in hospitals or anything on that measure. But yeah, gosh, I can only imagine just how scary that would have been. Plus, also hearing, what you've been up to, and not being aware of it. And then, you're suddenly being hit with that reality. It's like, oh my God, did I do that? It's just like, it makes you question yourself as a person. So I can only imagine how difficult that would have been.
Yeah, it was pretty horrible. Just the not knowing what I've done. Just it happened over and over. Yeah, it was scary. And I think also like another other kind of scary moments was I was dealing, and that's how I funded a lot of my addiction. And I had some scary moments in dealing as well, kind of like big acts of violence and that kind of thing. So I think overdoses and drug deals gone wrong, probably the two really horrible parts for me.
Oh, definitely. And look, I can relate to not in the sense that I was ever drug dealing per se. I mean, I used to always pick up drugs for friends and for myself and things like that. And then I would be like the connector between, them and the dealer. So in a sense I was, but like,
you get your own little free bit out of it. You scoop your bit out of the bag. You're like,
Yeah,
the guy shorted you. He's such a dick.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
I mean, it wasn't good, but even just being around those people, I mean, I was surrounded by guns, things like that. It was, and for that to be happening in Australia, you know, that was even a wake up call for me. So I was like, oh my God, this is a whole other world of people, you know, doing such dangerous things. Like you don't see this on the day to day. You're very, you know, blindsided by it, you know, and it's just crazy. It's crazy to see what goes on.
It is so wild. It's so wild. And I remember saying, when I was dealing, I'd say to people like, oh, I'm in it for the money, not the lifestyle, you know, because some people used to really, it seems like they loved that, like the drama of it and like all the weapons and shit. And
Big
I was
macho.
just, yeah, you know, the big fucking gold chains and driving all these cars, like souped up car. I mean, I had a couple of cars, but maybe I was on my way there. But yeah, I don't know. And then when I started seeing guns and that, I was like, all right, this is above my pay grade. Like I'm not interested in this. This is
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So scary. I remember I used to ride around with these guys and, you know, at first I was like, you know, this is chill. We're all good. You know, smoking a bit of meth. We're Gucci. And then we got to this like park and they started shooting birds and I was like, what is happening?
Oh my God.
It was terrifying. Like, you know, it wasn't even shooting at people. It was literally just birds. They were just, you know, they weren't keeping to themselves. They weren't doing anything. And I was like, this is nuts. I need to stop hanging out with these people. Like, you're crazy.
Oh my God.
It was so bad. It was so bad. And I remember one other time I was trying to pick up as well. And I didn't know the dealer very well. It was like a friend of a friend. You know how it goes. And we're all in my car. I'm the one driving. And I remember stopping and I think there must have been a couple of dealers on that street. It wasn't just the one. And these two guys started coming out with bats and were like, you know, we recognize your car from the other week you stole from us. And I was like, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I was like, trying to keep my cool.
There's just no rationalizing with these people when they're looping on gear.
I know. And I was like, this is the first time I've even been here. Like, and they were just so threatening. It was terrifying. I had to like literally just take off because I thought they were about to like bash my head in with these bats. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, you're mate. We're never coming here again.
So full on. So it's just so much aggression there as well.
There is.
I could. So story time, right? I was, you know, Telegram.
Yeah.
The app. Yeah, it's like an app you can buy drugs. It's like kind of like an open air market for buying drugs online. So I was living in backpacker accommodation in Perth. This was I was living in backpackers and I'd stopped dealing for a while and made the decision to start again, right? And I was using and had a couple of days where it was running pretty well on there, and I was like checking people. So basically when someone asks you to come and buy drugs, I would say, have you got somebody that can confirm that you're legit, you know? And then they would like get someone to message me, blah, blah, blah. I did all that. This one person I didn't check, right? And then
it's always that one.
It's always the one. It's always, I should have known. And then I've walked out the front of the backpackers to meet this guy. He's just buying like a half ounce of weed off me. And I was with a couple of boys that I knew out the front of the backpackers. So I felt pretty like confident, you know. I'm standing like on the side of the road with a couple of my friends. And I'm pretty high, you know, pretty high and busted up on stuff. This bombed out V8 Commodore rocks up, like so fucked up, like all the paint's peeling, the windows are down, full car of 5 boys in it. And they're just like giving me the daggers, like you know, like it's just there's just a weird feeling going on. And I was like, I'm just fucked up and greedy and I want my money. And walk over to I'm standing on the passenger side. They've pulled up to the side of the curb. I'm standing on the passenger side. The driver wants to smell the weed. fucking red flag. Little old me, I'm like, oh, here we go, mate. Like hand over the bag, and he guns it, of course, you know.
Yeah,
and yeah. And then I'm like, I stick my arm in this in the passenger window, you know, I've got the window under here, and got my hand on the inside, and he's gunning it, and so I'm sliding, and I can see the weed in like the center console, like in that little thing between the two seats, and like my free hand, I'm smacking the passenger in the head, trying to knock him out, because in my mind I'm like, oh well, I'll knock this guy out, and then I'm gonna like reach across and grab this bag of weed, and then I'm gonna roll off the car, and then my friends back there are gonna be like, yeah, Joel, like you're the fucking man. And this is all the kind of shit's going on in my mind, and I'm so concerned about what my friends think, right?
Yeah.
And it's also like a bit of an ego thing coming in for me, like, how dare these motherfuckers try and roll me? Like, do they know who I am? You know. I'm the kingpin of Northbridge, you know. Like, no, I didn't think I was that crash hot, but still, I was pissed off, right? So we're sliding and punching this guy. I must have got 4 or 5 hits on this poor guy, and he's not dropping out. I mean, I don't have much. I'm so skinny, like heroin addict. Punching this guy in the head, it's probably just like a bit of an inconvenience for him, and yeah, and then I drop. My shoe gets ripped off because there's so much friction because I'm sliding on my feet, and then I drop to my knee. I'm wearing jeans, and I'm sliding on my knees, and then I've got like both hands on the side of the window, right? So I can't punch this guy anymore. One knee's on the ground, and my jeans get ripped off because of the friction, and all there's like all my skin is hanging off my knee. We're sliding, and then I'm like, suddenly the mindset of like fuck you guys has completely switched to like, holy shit, I'm in real trouble here. Like I might get pretty badly hurt, and I start screaming at them to slow down. I'm screaming, I'm gonna die. I'm just screaming over and over, and they just keep speeding up, and I fall to my bum, and a big hole rips immediately in my pants. I've still got the scars to the day, like all my body, and I'm just holding on like one hand on, just doing my best, and then the driver starts trying to squash me into the parked cars on the side of the road. He's doing like these big
gosh,
fishtails, yeah, trying to.
He really didn't care, did he?
No. I had for a fucking half ounce of weed, like $150. Like, mate, really?
Yeah, what the
really?
hell? Yeah.
And I had I had a pound in my room as well, like all this cash, and like they could have got way more from me as well. I'm like critiquing their rolling methods. Like, you could have got more of me, boys. But yeah, and then anyways, we kind of, I'll wrap this up. We go around a big corner. He's trying to squash me again, and I managed to kind of let go at the right time, and they take off, and then there I am in a bloody heap in the middle of the road, and my clothes are all ripped off down the street, no shoes, and yeah, and that was just one of those hectic moments which is just kind of common, this like life of chaos. That was just what I was attracting, because that's what I was doing, and now, and to tell that story now, I'm like, it feels like a fucking movie, really. And because I'm like living in Byron, there's just all like sunshine and people surfing and having a good time and stuff, and it just feels like this foreign world, but I can totally see how that is some people's reality, and that was mine for quite some time, and you get back what you put out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. Honestly, the most drama that was manifesting in my life was around the time that I was in active addiction. And when I look back on some of the situations that arose, I was just like, this didn't even make sense. Why were we even getting so riled up over this? This is so dumb. That what didn't even happen. Like, we were just in this whole other world, and we were all crazy. We were just nuts.
Yeah. And you become a product of your environment as well, hey. And also
Yes.
the 5 people that you spend time with the most, you also become very much like them. And
Yes.
so you're hanging out with these people, and you're just feeding each other this
Oh, it's so
what a
dumb.
chaos.
So dumb. Honestly, I look back on it, I'm like, gross.
Yeah, but look where you are now, you know? It's like it's brought you to this point, and you wouldn't be
I
here
know.
now if you hadn't have experienced that.
True. And look, I can have a laugh about it now too.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It
like
was
being able
just
to have a
crazy.
laugh. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah.
But and saying all of this and hearing, all the craziness that you were experiencing, where were your friends and family during this time? Like, how were they reacting to the chaos that you were enduring?
Um, yeah, I had some really good friends. Pretty much up until when I started shooting smack. When I started shooting heroin, it kind of, I felt people really pull away from me, and I in turn pushed them away from me too.
Yeah.
And they were there, and they would let me know that they supported me, and they loved me, but it was from a distance. And so then I gravitated towards people who would enable my use, so other people that were
Yeah.
using too. And yeah, I just wasn't hanging out with good people. And yeah, my friends essentially said, you know what, once you get yourself sorted, we're here for you. And it made it difficult. Like I had a girlfriend that I was with for a couple of years. She was like straight edge, like wouldn't smoke a cigarette or anything. And I'm shooting heroin. It was crazy. And so yeah, that didn't last. But it lasted for a while, and
I
then
was
she
surprised
just,
it lasted that long.
yeah, she eventually just yeah, like just called it, and I'm so glad she did. I don't think I had the courage to actually end it myself.
Right. Yeah.
And then in regards to my family, my dad passed a few years ago, but mum was still in the picture, and she was very supportive and just did her best. She actually has a background of working in rehab, so
Right.
that was cool that she could understand what I was going through in some regard. But yeah, she was incredibly supportive, but kind of would bounce back and forth between, I don't want to enable you, but I don't want you to die. So
Yeah.
she would. So we kind of had some ground rules. Like I had a GPS tracker in my phone, like when I was actually still with that girlfriend, and she would, both my girlfriend at the time and mum would be able to see where I was, because my overdoses were so frequent. They needed to know when I was not responding, and where I was, so they could send the ambulance there.
Yeah, wow. Oh, well, that's really nice that you had those two people like in your corner. Like, even though unfortunately it didn't work out with your girlfriend at the time, like it sounded like she really did care about you, and she was definitely doing her best to try and support you. So that's really nice to know that you had people like that in your life, ready to catch you when you fell.
Of course, and I'm so grateful that I do, I did that, and I do, because I think there's a lot of people in that world that don't. They've
Yeah.
lost everyone and pushed everyone away, and or they just don't have anyone to begin with, and so I was really fortunate in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with that. I meet so many addicts who do not have a support system at all. And it can be due to their use, or they've just, not had a family growing up, or they're addicts as well, and they just don't have that support. So yeah, it's always good to recognize the people in our lives that have stuck around. Even myself, like I was telling you beforehand, I was getting real teary watching mine part one of my part two series with my sister, and the impact of my addiction on her. And, she had a real tough time during my whole ordeal. And she really stuck it out. But there were so many times where she got so close to just accepting that she'd lost me, which, was heartbreaking to hear now. But I'm so grateful that, she didn't abandon me. And not even abandoned, I shouldn't say that, but, you know, didn't put up such a strong boundary, I should say, that would leave us, you know,
didn't
not
give up on you.
Yeah, yes, didn't give up on me. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, that we really push them. You know,
yeah, like, we do.
and that fine line, that's something I've done. I've spoken to parents of addicted children support group about, you know, that fine line between enabling and supporting, and you know, because there are times where it feels like if your loved one is, it feels like they're about to die, right? They're like right there on the brink, and if you don't save them in some way, then they're going to die. And it's like, well, how could I not help this person? But then at the same time, it's they do need to learn their lessons to be able to make change, and to be able to see what they need to do differently. But like, it's easy for me to say, right? Like, it's like, if that's your child or something like that, and I'm like, oh well, mate, you're enabling them. Just let them hit rock bottom. What? Like, that is some fucking hard knowledge to take in. You know, it's a really tough position for people to be in.
Absolutely. And me and my sister actually spoke a lot on this, actually, because addiction does run in our family, and there's been a lot of times that, you know, people just want to get in there and help, and it's, you know, I'm the one often saying, like, let them hit rock bottom, just let them fall, they need it. But it is really, really hard to even accept that, or in a sense, like, allow it to happen, because you don't want to see your loved one hit rock bottom. It's a hard place to go, especially if it lands them in like jail or hospital. Like, it depends on the consequences of that as well. So yeah, it does get really hard.
As heavy as it is, they might die.
Yes,
that's the reality of it. Yeah. So there's rock bottom, but like, what is rock bottom?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many levels, isn't there? Oh goodness. So when did you first start to realize that this was actually a problem? Like, it sounds like you had a few of those moments, but what was that final moment that actually got you serious about recovering?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, definitely had some realizations earlier on where I was like, okay, like, I am addicted here. I'm a full-blown heroin addict. Where I turned things around was, like, I'd tried a couple of different treatment centers, rehab, and I've been to detox a couple of times, and nothing was really working because I didn't want to change.
Yeah.
Either that, or I wasn't really prepared to change, and I was just going to these places just to get people off my back, such as my girlfriend and mum. Just like, leave me alone. Like, I'm okay doing what I'm doing. You know. Anyways, I was in a pretty. I went to a rehab. Ended up actually overdosing inside the rehab, and
wow. How did that happen?
Oh, mate. So I had drugs delivered to the rehab.
Yeah, I've heard that happens. Yeah.
It was in like regional WA, so it was a few hours away from Perth, and I had to really make some effort to get it there, and pay a lot of money, and ended up overdosing inside there. Woke up in the hospital in Bunbury, and then made my way back to the rehab, and a friend of mine in there found my gear and then overdosed on that in there, and I watched him getting resuscitated, and then I got kicked out the following day. Like, it was just this horrible traumatic experience for me, and ended up having 9 overdoses in the week following. And that because I just, like, had lost the will to live, and I just didn't really care. And from there, that's when I was like, the car dragging incident kind of happened after that. So, like, I'd lost all accommodation and whatnot, and I was just kind of bouncing between backpackers in Perth because I would just get kicked out of them for my poor behavior. One of the guys from the rehab where I overdosed, we had made friends. He'd come out of the rehab. We were living together, in this really shitty backpackers, like super dirty, cheap. And he was a heavy meth user, I was a heroin user, and we'd kind of like look after each other when the other one was bugging out or sick or whatever. Share our stuff because we had very little. And then he ended up taking his own life, and I was like, the reality of my situation really set in, because like I've been kicked out from the rehab, and I, like I was saying, I had fuck all, but I had my mate, and we were like getting, but we'd share. We're both sick, and we'd buy get some money together, buy a 6-pack of ciders, like the strongest ones, and share it, and all these kind of going halves and things. And I was like, oh, at least I've got my man, And then when I lost him, I was like, holy shit, I've got nobody. Nobody, like mum didn't want anything to do with me. No one wanted anything to do with me. And I'm dope sick, I'm hanging out. And then my dad, who was living in England because my parents are separated, he died suddenly from this rare cancer, just like out of the blue.
Gosh.
Died a couple of days after my friend had committed suicide.
Wow.
And I really felt like, I was at like a crossroads in my journey, and it was, I can keep down this path of like using and just escaping and running, and whatever I've been doing so far is just hurting so much. I can't do it anymore. And the other option was to seek treatment, and so then I got myself into a rehab, where like one that I really wanted to go to, and took a fair bit of work, and was in there for about 8 months in total, and that's where we got healthy.
Amazing. I mean, like, horrible story, but gosh, like sometimes it takes those huge life moments for that reality to really hit, doesn't it? Yeah. And which rehab was it that you went to, if you don't mind me asking?
I went to Palmerston.
Oh, okay.
Which is in Northbridge there, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the office is in Northbridge, but the rehab is not there.
Yes. I was going to say I have done some counseling, got some drug counseling and Palmerston in Northbridge, and I actually really liked their services just there. So I can only imagine what the rehab was like. But yeah, you should be so proud of yourself as well to just see where you are today, hearing everything that you've been going through. I mean, you were like hardcore in it, and look at you now. You should be so proud.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
That's okay.
I live a pretty good life. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so nice.
It up in Byron Bay.
yeah, I've got it pretty good here. Paradise. No, it's and same to you as well. It goes back to you, like, look what you're doing and sharing this podcast and spreading awareness and helping people. I just think it's so cool to the energy that I would put into sourcing drugs and scoring every day and getting on and like living that whole fucking drama cycle. People would say to me that we're helping me, like counselors and whatever. Joel, imagine if you put all of that into something positive, like you have the determination and the willpower to kind of do whatever you want. And I always hear it and be like, oh, shut the fuck up. Get out of it. Like I'm a heroin addict. I'm nobody. I'm going to die soon, And and the reality is, it's like it's so true. Now I've just got so much strength and resilience and determination, and that's in myself. But I see it so much in like the clients that I work with, and when I was actually working with Palmerston for a bit as well, and I'd see that in the people coming in, and like once they can kind of turn the corner and overcome that, the world's yours.
Oh, absolutely. And you forget that when you're in active addiction. It's just, you're so tunnel visioned and you're in this little bubble. I like to describe it as my shame bubble. So, I was just sitting in this ball of shame. I didn't like anyone coming in close, and I really couldn't see beyond that. I was just completely stuck in that tunnel vision, and I was very focused on me. It was woe is me. This is just my life. I had accepted it, for so long. And it was just thinking back to that place and where I was, you know, I feel sad for myself that I couldn't really see out of that, but that's all I knew at that time. I mean, you only know what you know, right? And it's tough because I feel I hear so many addicts, you know, I have mentored a few people through their recovery journey, and, you know, just being a holding hand for a lot of people. And then there's been some people who've express that they want to get better. So, you know, you have a few of those light bulb moments and you're like, this isn't really good. I probably should sort my shit out. But then it's just so easy to fall back into it. Like we just go back to those old behaviors, those old patterns, and we're comfortable with them. We're so comfortable with them. But it's actually harder that way. Like we're not really making it easier for ourselves, even though we feel better because we're numbing things out. We're still going through that vicious cycle of addiction, you know, and our lives are not getting any better. It's only getting harder, and people you just can't see that at the time when you're in it. It sucks.
That's it. And until what's that? There's like a saying. Oh, I'm going to totally butcher this, but it's like the pain of behavior change doesn't happen till the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if you're in it, it's all you can see.
It is. Just completely consumed by it. It's so hard. But even so, when you start the recovery journey, that's not easy either. It's not like you just get sober and, you know, all your problems are gone. It's usually
No,
it's a complete opposite.
It's like finally you can see what's going on in your life. So you take the drugs. It's like, so I tried detox a couple of times. I went in for 14 days, whatever it was, where it was just a medically assisted detox. So they'd pull me off the drugs, right, rapidly, and then and then they send me out, right, and I'm out in the world, and then all my problems start again, and I'm like, hold on, I'm not doing the drugs. What's the issue? And it took me a few times, a few attempts of that to realize, like, hold on, the drugs are the symptom of the issue. So like I'm having issues in my life. I'm using drugs to self-soothe, and now getting rid of those drugs, my life is now there for me to look at. And I've got some fucking work to do. And so that is so true. It's a bit of a cliche statement, like the work starts when you get out of rehab or when you get off the drugs or whatever. But that's it. You've got to figure out another way of dealing with things.
Yeah, and look, it's really hard. Like I'm not one to say, like, you know, recovery is all sunshine and rainbows and your life is just going to drastically change overnight. Like, you know, it's not like that at all. Like I honestly felt like constantly throughout my recovery, like I've been recovering since 2015. And I've had many lapses, many relapses as well. To my listeners out there, it was not linear. It wasn't like I just suddenly was like, that's it. You know, it's all good, sorted. I'm done.
I'm healed.
Yeah. I made that choice and voila, we're here. No, it wasn't like that at all. Like I remember I experienced a lot of lapses and relapses because I was learning, or trying to learn, I guess I should say, how to sit with my own emotions that I found the most uncomfortable. And because that was when I used the most, was when I was feeling those uncomfortable feelings and I didn't want to sit with it. I didn't want to deal with it. So I band-aided over and like it was just, that was my way of dealing things for so long. And so talking on lapses, right? Like, you know, recovery is not easy. You do sometimes take a couple of steps forward and then a couple of steps back, and then you take a couple more forward. They're really, really common in recovery. And I find they're so pivotal for our growth though. Like lapses, I always say, are our biggest teachers, particularly in recovery. So how often would you say, even for yourself, like, did you experience lapses often after you decided, you know, enough was enough and you went to recovery? How did you go?
Yeah, 100% recovery isn't linear, right?
No.
And I remember being told that in rehab, you know, like you'll most likely lapse or relapse. There's a very small percentage that won't, but most people do. And I remember thinking, oh sweet, all good then. I'm in the percentage that won't. Like I'm actually better at recovery than everyone else, you know?
Yeah.
And then it happened. It happened for me a few times, kind of a couple times soon after rehab, short lapses, but it was pretty hectic. Like how it had been, say, a year since I'd used and was like kind of out of that life, and then it was like a one-time use, and boom, like straight into like an overdose. Got kicked out of my house. Was like living in backpackers. Friends just peeled away from me. Like I was like, what the fuck? Like this is all just, it was just so hectic and severe, and it was like, it was almost more intense than it was before. And yeah, that was, yeah, I learned a lot from it. Had a couple within maybe a few months of each other, like little lapses, just like a one-time thing, but like I said, caused some pretty drastic effects. And then I had one quite a bit after that, where I thought, oh hey, I'm healed. Even though like I'm right, like I'm working in this industry and like sharing with people like, hey, this is something that you've always got to be mindful of, that it's there, and don't get complacent. I wasn't listening to my own advice that I'm giving out, and I let myself believe that I was just kind of above it now. And so that last lapse was horrific, but it taught me so much in that sense of like, hey, this is something that is most likely going to be with you for the rest of your life, and you just need to figure out how to stay on top of it and keep it in check. But yeah, it's definitely a reality, and yeah, it's just kind of figuring out what works for you, and still like learning my triggers and how to deal with those. And I still get thoughts of using that pop up here and there, but it's not something that I act on anymore.
Yeah. And for that, you should be very proud in itself. Like that takes so much strength, and people don't realize how much strength there is when it comes to any addict that's in recovery. Honestly, my hat goes off to any addict who attempts the recovery journey. It is a tough one, but you become so resilient, so strong. Like you're built for life after that. I feel like you've just gained so many life skills and tools that like you can accomplish anything if you can get through recovery. Like you really can.
It's so true.
It is. It's like a superpower we develop afterwards. It's amazing, and you know it's a tough road. It's a long road, but even for myself, like I was finding I actually had a similar experience to you. What you just mentioned before, that you know you did have that really big like reality check, and when you had that lapse, and it was a lot harder for you. And I know even for me, like I had that little bit of a reawakening that I do really need to be focused on that maintenance. Like I'm not always going to just have it completely all good, and being humble about that, like really accepting that and just being like, look, okay, I'm probably going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life. So I really need to make sure that I have, you know, all the tools and resources in place to assist me. And I shouldn't just drop anything just because I'm starting to feel a bit better, because that was often when I would experience a lapse, is when I stopped seeing my drug counselor, because I felt like, you know, I'd gone 8 months or a year and I was like, I got this. Like, I don't need it.
I got this. Yeah.
I was like, I don't need this drug counselor anymore. Like, we're done. Really. Proof is in the pudding. You know? Yeah. But yeah, and then shortly after that, I was lapse. I'm like, damn, okay, probably shouldn't have done that. So yeah, that was a big lesson I learned as well. You just always have to keep that maintenance up, and you know, ensuring that you're checking in not only with yourself but others as well, keeping that support network. I think that's really vital for long-term recovery as well. But now that you've been out of rehab for the last 3 years, what have you been up to?
A few things. Got a few pots on the simmer at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've really found my purpose in serving others. So I'm doing support work. I'm a youth worker, and I also am a support worker in a rehab as well, which is really cool. It's an amazing role to have, because I just can create this unique connection with the client, because I've been through it, and
you get it.
Yeah, I'm relatable to them, and it's just really I love doing that. Love doing that work. And a little bit of NDIS work, just like a lot of support work stuff. And then I'm studying a diploma of alcohol and other drugs at the moment, because I'd like to be working towards like being on the clinical team in a rehab or something like that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, you should. Yeah. Again, you should be so proud. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, stop it. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my work stuff. And then just really, I just really value my health now. And I just, like I was saying to you kind of before the call, like I'm just I'm a bit obsessed with my exercise. But it feels like it's like a healthy obsession in a way, as healthy as it can be, you know. And like I was saying, I've hurt my shoulder from pushing that too far, so I'm still learning like how to balance things out.
Your limits,
yeah. And I think, I can do anything, and I can, it's I've got to keep tabs on these things. But just really, enjoying being away from that fucking chaos, really.
That fucking chaos. I don't miss it one bit.
life just seems so simple now. I remember, like, I love to surf and go to the beach, and that just really, it feels like a very simple thing. I'm just going to go, like, it's sunny and it's nice and warm, and I'm going to get in the water, And I remember I used to hate the beach when I was using. People would invite me to the beach, and I'd be like, why would I want to get fucked up and sit in the sun? How am I going to get drugs at the beach? Where am I going to shoot? It's like
the logistics of it,
And I'd be like, it's all sandy, and like, I'm going to be all uncomfortable, and and it's like, now I just have this real like gratitude for kind of it feels like basic stuff. And I remember that there's that transition period of like when I got myself healthy, and I'd be like, this is fucking boring. Like I want to use like I'm so used to that life of like life being chaos. Like a graph up and down of like I'm gonna use them high, and then I'm sick and coming down high, and it's like this. It's very exciting, right? And it's so much adrenaline, and that adjustment to like real life, which is more like a small little like up and down, kind of in the middle. Thinking that this is so boring. Why would I want to do this? But then after a little while, that whole mindset for me shifted, and I found so much joy and happiness in that life. And those small peaks, I find like genuine joy and fulfillment, and like inner peace. Whereas before there was none of that. It's just like boom, excitement. Oh, this is fucking horrible darkness, and like that's just not sustainable.
No, it's not. And look, I experienced the same thing. I found myself like when I really started mentally clearing, and I wasn't having as many negative thoughts. I actually got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder quite late in life. It was probably only 2.5 years ago.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I mean, it explained a lot, and it put it made me understand a little bit why I was such chaos even from such a young age, and just getting like the proper treatments and things like that for that as well. So like looking after my mental health, looking after my addiction. I mean, it's all intertwined, isn't it? And dealing with those core traumas. Can't even speak today. Traumas as well that led me to those places of addiction too, and getting my grip on that. Life just started to become so beautiful, and everything just started coming my way that I really deserved. Like I met the love of my life. I live in the Airship now. I'm right by the beach, and I wasn't going to the beach either in active addiction. I absolutely hated going down there, but I love the beach. I've always loved the beach, but I just didn't like being out there when I wanted to hide away, when I was, dealing with that. I didn't want the world to see me. I didn't want to be out there. Like, I didn't want to be judged.
It's scary.
It is. And I was always like mindful of that. So I'd hide away, and I wasn't really enjoying life. I wasn't living. I was merely existing. And it was just such a sad existence. It was not fulfilling at all. And, I did also experience that moment of life suddenly becoming really boring. I even still struggle with that now and then. Like, I honestly, I even had my footy ball on Saturday, and I'm seeing everyone getting real wild, and I was like, I can't go there because I don't trust myself to go there anymore. So I'm not going to get that crazy. But then I felt so boring. I was like, well, now I'm just kind of sitting over here, like twiddling my thumbs. Like, what do I do now? Like,
yeah,
it's hard. It's really hard. But I'm so grateful for the little things, though. Like, that stuff doesn't really matter. Like, sometimes I get caught up in it, and and I get hooked on that feeling of being boring. But I think I'm just mourning a version of myself as well that I am no longer anymore. And the version I am now is so much better. Like, so much better. My life is so much better. Everything is better. I feel like everything is going so well, and I couldn't have said that 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you'd probably wake up like after the footy ball, you'll probably wake up the next morning, you like go do whatever you do, and you feel good and like get some sun.
Yeah.
And those people might be in bed with a hangover. Like, I call that a success,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great having my weekends back. I mean, I do still drink here and there, but never to a point where I'm getting drunk or anything like that. I've really had to work on my self-control with that, because it can lead to lapses. I've had to be very mindful of that.
I think it's really cool. We had this chat the other day, but it's just about min and finding that balance rather than abstinence being the one and only path to recovery.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that completely. We could go on a whole other tangent on that, but we won't right now.
Yeah.
But we'll start to wrap it up. There was one question I actually forgot to ask you as well. Was there any, because you were in Perth for quite some time during your addiction. I think it was throughout your whole addiction. What were the support groups or like rehabs that you found the most helpful for you? Like, what were the best resources for you here?
Love that question. So I found so detox for me, Next Step was incredible. Next Step inpatient services in East Perth. They're a free service, and they have fantastic counsellors there as well. And they've obviously got the detox centre, and then they linked me with Palmerston. Palmerston are just fucking incredible. That's where I like you said, I mean, they've got that office in Northbridge, so I was doing like outpatient groups to begin with, and and they've got the rehab just kind of outside Perth as well, and that's where I did my 8 months in there, and they were just fantastic and very open-minded as well. I found I really connected with their style of rehabilitation, because it wasn't like this is the one way of recovery and you have to do this, and which I kind of hear in some other rehabs. They might have like the 12-step model or something like that. It was more like figuring it out for yourself and empowering yourself. So I couldn't rate Palmerston highly enough. And also smart recovery groups, which I am a facilitator of, and that's how I started working for Palmerston. I started running these groups, which are they're essentially like a training, little group meetings, kind of like you've got the 12-step meetings, AA and NA. I guess this is like, I saw it as an alternative to that, where it's more like little training sessions where there'll be a facilitator or two facilitators, and then you'll might come there with an agenda of like, I want to reduce my drug use, or if you're still kind of using a little bit, or it might be like, hey, I'm off the drugs now and I want to start exercising again. How do I do that? And creating like realistic goals and whatnot. And I thought they were amazing because I did give the 12-step groups a fair whack, and some of it just wasn't for me. And like I was saying, I thought that was everybody in recovery you had to go full abstinence and attend these 12-step meetings, or I was going to end up in heroin again. But then I found these smart recovery groups and realized, hey, there's a whole world of people here that are doing really well. They don't have to do 12-step groups, and I really connected with them.
I've actually done the smart recovery groups at Palmerston, and I've done a bit of 12 steps, but yeah, I was exactly the same as you. I wasn't always feeling super aligned with the 12-step program. Not to say that it's not great, like it does serve a great purpose for a lot of people. But I found with the recovery groups, it kind of made things quite simple. You know, like you focus on the 7 days before and then the 7 days ahead, and that's it. Like, you know, It's just 1 week, and I'm like, all right, I can do that. I can focus on a week at a time. That's fine. And that made it a lot easier for me, actually.
Yeah, I love that, because I find going the big war stories of how shit life was before when we can talk about this whole life before. I found myself feeling very negative sometimes. But then these smart recovery groups, because it is keeping you so present and focused on what's happening now, those stories are all kind of irrelevant. Every time I left feeling optimistic. So it was just, really great.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And to wrap it up, if you could say something to a struggling addict who could be listening right now, what would you say to them?
You don't need to do it alone, and don't try and be a hero. Just accept help when you need it. Everybody needs support at some point in their lives, and the sooner you can do that, and you really want to change, the sooner it's going to happen.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joel. I really loved having you on. You've been an absolute delight. And again, I just want to say I'm so damn proud of you. You are just absolutely kicking goals, and I love to see it.
Thanks so much, Paris. Yeah, back at you. And absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much.